I'm gonna have to unmute my microphone here in order for the recording to record what we're talking about. So I'm unmuting even though we're talking on the phone. So what I wanted to check in with you today is this is kind of an advanced lesson on doing Kaizen work. So you haven't been involved in a Kaizen or done a Lean class yet, but I wanted to introduce you to how some of those skills can be put to use. So in the operations folder, we have the Lean folder here, and the one that I'm talking about is our installation manual Kaizen. So inside of this Kaizen, we have our scope sheet. And I think we've looked at scope sheets a little bit before. The scope sheet basically gives you who's on the team, the name of the Kaizen itself, and then it's got the problem statement. In this case, we don't have a process to create or maintain a manual that meets the needs of the customers. So it lists out the current situation and the problems, everything from we have some outdated manuals, don't have a process to create or maintain, or the resources. People don't know where the manual is, don't know if the customers are even using it. It's hard to access outside of the office. There's no schedule for creating it or even making updates or publishing. Hard to keep it in sync. And then it's all manual work. It's not tied into Fabs. So based on the problems, we created what our goals were. So we had the goals to have each standard of the W75 intersection documented, to create a process to create, review, and maintain them, and to have the manual part of the current process and occur earlier, to make them accessible and visible with notification updates, being able to survey the PM shop and field for how they're using the manuals, to be able to schedule resources, and then develop a method to link the drawings, the manual, and Fabs, and also to be able to create videos and link those to the manual. Now this area here, we consider these parking lot goals, things that we thought could be beneficial, but would not necessarily fit into what we were focusing on specifically for our Kaizen. And so this would be, our parking lot goals then were to develop a method to start at the source, and then develop a method to train employees using the manual. So we've been working on our Kaizen for quite a while. We've got a Trello board that we're using, and then inside of this folder, we've got several documents that we're working with. So we came up with an action items list where we basically created a document to isolate what each of our goals are. And then we just had kind of brainstorming sessions and put some ideas on here on how to develop what we wanted our action item to look like. So these were just some kind of thoughts as we were going. So last week, I assigned a homework assignment to the team to go in and create what would be an ideal process map for what would this look like if we didn't have any limitations on how we envision that this creating of the installation manual might work. So what I wanted to do was share with you how I generated my version of that, and then how I tied that together with the scope sheet. So I just made a drafts folder, and I created the draft of the future state here. So this is just a Word document. And then I used, I just made a copy of the scope sheet so that I could use this to tie in with what were our goals. And then as I was writing out what my future ideal state was going to be, I developed those specifically in mind with what the goals were going to be. So this part of the document, the future state, this is just in a vision of how the installation manual process potentially would work. I started this from scratch as a Word document, but I did it based on our discussion items, on our goals and objectives, and then I went back and reviewed the action items that we had discussed. Plus, we have a Trello board, and we've documented a lot of our to-do, doing, done, and ideas on the Trello board. So I used all of these documents and just consideration of how we might want this process to work to develop this ideal future state. And I tasked the rest of the team to do the same. And at our meeting today, what we're going to do is compare the different versions of these. We'll take the things that make sense and are aligned with what our goals statements are, and then we'll use this to develop what our ideal future state is. Once we have the future state developed and documented, then we can start tackling these things one by one and work out little standard work instruction sheets, SWISs, for what each part of this ideal future state would look like. That will give us the ability to define what our Kaizen event will eventually turn into a new process. So with all of that in mind, I won't go through all of these in detail, but I'll give you a couple of highlights here, and then I'm going to show you how I tied them into our goals sheet. So again, this is just my draft of this, and we'll be comparing these and making a combined version with everybody's input. The thing about doing a Kaizen event is that we want everybody to be able to have a share in what we're talking about. So the first part of this, to create templates for the different conditions that we have in the manual. Right now we have 57 field conditions and 127 shop conditions. So I'd want to create some templates that would be able to accommodate the types of things. Now, we wouldn't necessarily build out that many actual templates. We might be able to accommodate that with 3 or 4 different template models. So I don't want to get distracted that this is a big number. This is just what we have actually in the manual of things that we're documenting. So in the ideal state, what I'm envisioning is that the Jumpstart sends out the profile details for review, which is the same as what they do now. Then we have the installation manual team identify any new intersections that are not part of the manual that we have currently. And then stuff that's existing, but with just slightly different parts, we wouldn't need to redo that. So then I went to how we would do it. So basically it's a checklist review once those profiles are sent out. And then I went on to include some examples of what new intersections could include. So it could be different cover depths, new fab logic, different sealant, or a combination of parts that haven't been documented yet. Then, if we identify that we do need to make new details, then I put in a process here for how to review anything that's been commented on since the last update, and then schedule the resources to actually do the work. Once we do schedule the resources, my vision would be that we build out the prototype units using the same method that we do in the takeoff program now. And then we have the ability at that point to be able to tie in the fab tickets to the actual manual. So in order to make sure all that makes sense after we build it out, we would have a working session. So we'd include Jumpstart, the Revit team, drafting, takeoff, shop in the field to just do this work together. So just set up a Zoom session or just review this all at the same time so that we have the ability to clean up this document as we're working on it. Then once we get all that completed, just finalizing those logics on the templates that we had created back here on step 1. So then we document any new system logic requirements, and next up would be sending it for review. Have the team comment on anything needs to be cleaned up, and then do the updates. And that's similar to what we do now. It's basically you do the work, you check it, you update it as necessary, and then you publish it. Part of this, though, is if we can get the shop in the field to make a little video for that, what that intersection's doing, then we could build out our library of video that we could use for training as well. And then we actually already have a method where we can put a QR code and a link for the video right on the PDF, so that if you're looking at that manual later, you can just click on it and run the video. Right now, we don't have anything set up with that, but we have the ability to do it. Then advertising, just letting people know that it's been published. So we're thinking about using this BIM 360 platform to put the manual in, but then everybody is in a manager's meeting, notes, review at some course during the week, so we could publish it there and on our engineering meeting. Then we could use that manual and link it for the training. So that's the whole process, how I'm envisioning that future state. Now, we would have to work out the very fine tuning and the details, but like I said, we work out little Swisses for those once we clean this up a little bit. This is, again, it's a draft, it's not the final language. But the other part I wanted to show you was how I tied in what our goals were. So I copied our scope sheet over so that I could see these. And then let me stretch this out a little bit so you can see what this looks like. So here, to have each standard of the intersections documented, that would actually be this item 1 of creating all of the templates that we have in our matrix. So these counts are based on that matrix. The next one would be to develop a process to create, review, and maintain the manual. Well, to create it, I identified that in items 3 and 4. And then for the review, I did that in items 5. And to do the maintenance on it, I also identified that what that step would be in item 5. Then the manuals to be part of the current process and occur earlier, I addressed that sequence in line item 2 and line item 3. Then to make the manuals accessible, that's addressed here in line item 12. So it's showing where we're putting it, how do I notify people, etc. Surveying the shop PM and field, that occurs in item 7, where you actually have that working session and we all build out the manual together. So the survey is part of just doing the work together. The ability to schedule resources, I put that on line item 5. Basically, you see what needs to be done, and then you put in a resource request when we do our scheduling process. The method to link the videos to the manuals actually shows up on line item 11. And then I actually went and looked at the parking lot goals too, because we had talked about creating a method to start at the source based on the profile set. And I've got that at the very beginning, is that's just where we start. We just review the profiles to see, do we need to make any installation manual details at this time? So that would actually occur at items 2 and 3, would even address this parking lot goal. And then using it for training would be part of this line item 12, where we have that linked video and we advertise what's going on. So that's a lot of stuff. I put a lot of work into this yesterday to develop it, but I wanted to show you that the way that we approach creating a solution ties in to what are the goals? What are we trying to accomplish? So there's not a lot of extra stuff in my future vision. I didn't talk about how to create a Revit model intersection, that kind of thing. I was specifically focusing on how do we tackle the things that we decided together as a group that we wanted to achieve as a product of doing this Kaizen together. So anyway, that's kind of where I wanted to go with today's advanced lesson. So any thoughts there? I know it's a lot, and this is not something you've been exposed to a lot yet either. I've given you little pieces, but I wanted to kind of show you how this is starting to tie together in one of our groups.
I have some question about this, Bill. I don't know if I can do the questions.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. The first question that I have here, what about this? I don't know if you can scroll down of the page of the left. Oh,
this one.
This one, yeah. I see the name. I want to see the name of the is ideal future state.
Yes.
Installation manual Kaizen. Who did this? Just you or a lot of people together?
So this is my take on it, and then this afternoon we'll get together with all of our Kaizen team. We'll go through everybody's drafts in here. We'll put our thoughts together. Esley made her version of it. So if we opened up her version, it's got kind of, this is how that process would look from her ideal state. So we'll look at these and we'll see how many of these things are aligned with what I have. And then we'll have this group discussion. Once we combine the thoughts on these, then we'll develop a more formalized version of this. As of now, this is just a rough draft. So this is my copy of the rough draft.
I understand. In this case, when you tell me it's a draft, maybe it's all the ideas that bring to your mind, and you start to write. It's like I don't know if the correct expression, brainstorm about ideas.
Yep.
Okay, but it's a personal brainstorm, I think.
Yes.
It's okay. It's something that I like to know about that part. So when you are tying this ideal future state with the names, I forget sometimes.
Well, just the rest of the team. Yes, the rest of the team, really.
Yeah, when you are doing that, it's not necessary the relationship between the number of one item in the ideal future state with the scope sheet.
That's true, right? Because
Okay.
if you looked at the way that mine came out,
Mhm.
our number 4 item on our goal, actually, I addressed it in item number 12 because I want the future state to be in a good order so that it makes sense basically from start to finish. But our goals are not necessarily in the order that a process would occur. This is just the things that we wanted to achieve.
Okay. 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 For the moment, is all the questions that I have.
Okay.
You told me that we are going to continue with this after, I don't know. I like to read all this information. I don't know if you can show me where I can read it if I need to go from my
Yes.
computer.
I'll send you a link to this folder so that you can just examine it and see, you know, just get a sense of what this looks like, and then
Okay.
I'll check in with you as well to give you an idea of how our discussion this afternoon goes, and then you'll be able to see what our final version of the ideal future state looks like, and we can compare that to the draft so we can see where did we pull the themes together in order to make one group document that makes sense with how we want the process to actually work.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
That's
so
great.
let me just give me 1 second. I'm going to stop recording here to touch bases with you on other stuff.